Hi guys, I'm Ashutosh Akkalakote and this is my channel Google KBS. Today is Teachers Day and on Teachers Day I'm going to present to you my Teachers Day special dedicated to all the teachers in this world, especially my teachers. And today's Teachers Day special is the poem analysis of a poem by a teacher poet. The poem analysis is of the poem The Opposites Game of Patricia Mays. The poet is Brendan Constantine. And here's how the poem goes. This day, my students and I play the opposites game with a line from Emily Dickinson. My life had stood a loaded gun, it goes, and I write it on the board, pausing so that they can call out the antonyms. My, your, life, death, had stood, will sit, a, many, loaded, empty, gun, gun. For a moment, much like the one between lightning and the sound, the children just stare at me. And then comes a flurry, a hailstorm of answers. Flower, says one. No, book, says another. That's stupid, cries third. The opposite of a gun is a pillow, or maybe a hug, but not a book. No way is it a book. With this, the others gather their thoughts. And suddenly, it's shouting match. No one can agree. For every student, there's a final answer. It's a song, a prayer, a promise, like a wedding ring, and later, a baby. Or what's that person who delivers babies? A midwife? Yes, a midwife. No, that's wrong. You're so wrong you'll never be right again. It's a whisper, a star. It's saying I love you into your hand and then touching someone's ear. Are you crazy? Are you the president of stupid land? You should be. When's the election? It's a teddy bear, a sword, a perfect peach. Go back to the first one. It's a flower, a white rose. When the bell rings, I reach for an eraser, but a girl snatches it from my hand. Nothing's decided, she says. We're not done here. I leave all the answers on the board. The next day, some of them have stopped talking to each other. They've taken sides. There's a flower club and a kitten club, and two boys calling themselves the Snowballs. The rest has stuck with the original game, which also tried to write something like poetry. It's a dime. It's a dance. The opposite of gun is a museum in France. It's the moon. It's a mirror. It's the sound of a bell and the hair. The arguing starts again, more shouting, and finally a new club. For the first time, I dare to push them. Maybe all of you are right, I say. Well, maybe. Maybe it's everything we said. Maybe it's everything we didn't say. It's words and the spaces for words. They're looking at each other now. It's everything in this room and outside this room and down the street and in the sky. It's everyone on campus and at the mall and all the people waiting at the hospital and at the post office. And yeah, it's a flower too. All the flowers, the whole garden. The opposite of gun is wherever you point it. Don't write that on the board, they say. Just say a poem. Your death will sit through many empty poems. Now, everyone, we are going to learn a bit about the poet. So, this is Brendan Constantine. Okay, if you sift through this no, biography given on his website, you'll find that he's a you'll find that he's a one of the most recognized poets. He has served as a teacher in the local schools and colleges since 1995. It doesn't, so it clearly goes to show that he's a current day poet. It even shows Bouncy Bounce in 2018. So there's his most recent collections are among his most recent collections is Bouncy Bounce in 2018. So he's a current day poet. Okay, so that goes to show he's around, and it clearly says that he's a local school teacher in Southern California. So if we analyze this poem now, we will need some background about him, and that's why we needed the poet. This will be very helpful. Now, let's talk about what theory we are going to follow, what point of view we are going to take. We are going to say the events around the creator of any literary work affect their literary works to some extent. Okay, so let's go with this in mind. Let's go ahead and analyze this poem line by line. This day, my students and I play the opposites game with a line from Emily Dickinson. This day, my students and I play the opposites game. What is the opposites game? It's a game where one calls one word and the other has to call its antonym. Day, night, happiness, sadness. So that's the way. So you play, but here they take a specific line from a poem of Emily Dickinson's. So they take that poem's one particular line and they play this opposite game. So with a line from Emily Dickinson, my life had stood a loaded gun, it goes, and I write it on the board, pausing so that they can call out the antonyms. So the teacher, Brendan, he play he calls out every word in the line, my life had stood a loaded gun, which is a line from the poem of Emily Dickinson's. So he writes each word, calling it out, so that waiting before writing the next word, so that they can call out the antonym. My, your, life, death, had stood, will sit, a, many, loaded, empty. My, your, life, death, had stood, will sit, a, many, loaded, empty, gun, gun. Now they call out for every my life. My is the antonym of my is your. Life antonym is dead. Had stood, the antonym for had stood will be will sit. For a, the antonym is many. For loaded, the antonym is empty. But what's the antonym for gun? That's the question. Now, from the reading of the poem, we get a brief idea that maybe the poem is based around this idea of the gun and the death. Okay, so we'll go ahead. Gun, gun. For a moment, very much like the one between lightning and the sound, the children just stare at me. And then it comes, a flurry, a hailstorm of answers. So for a moment, gun, gun. I mean, as soon as he asks the question, what is the antonym of gun? They just stare at him blankly for a second and then it hits. Gun. You have to find the antonym of gun. For a moment, very much like the sound, very much like the one between lightning and its sound, lightning and thunder. There's a small time difference, right? So they just stare at him blankly, thinking what could be the possible answers. Then suddenly, it comes a flurry, a hailstorm of answers. So, in such a flurry, it almost sounds like a hailstorm. That much, those many answers he gets, that form of answers. You can flower, says one. No book, says another. That's stupid, cries a third. So here goes the debate. Flower. The first one to respond says it's flower. The second says, no, 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 it's a book. That's stupid, cries a third. The opposite of a gun is a pillow, or maybe a hug, but not a book. No way is it a book. So, the opposite, the third one, the third one says, no, 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 that's stupid. It cannot be a book, because how can how can the opposite of gun be a book? That doesn't make sense. But then he thinks maybe it's a pillow, okay, because it's soft. Gun shoots and then it's so then, or maybe it's something comforting, like a hug, because when someone gets shot, someone else need to be comforted, the relatives. So, but not a book. No way is it a book. With this, the others gather their thoughts. Who others? The students. They think, they also think, because no one is coming out with the final answer. No one knows which is the correct answer. They think, so everyone, they start thinking, okay, what can be the opposite of gun? Okay? And suddenly it's shouting match. No one can agree. For every student, there's a final answer. Suddenly it becomes shouting match because now every student thinks that their answer is right? There's an argument. No one knows. It's like asking, is virus living or dead? Oh, the common paradox. Did the chicken come first or the egg come first? Nobody knows. So this is for every student. There's a final answer. No one knows. Just like in the chicken and egg paradox. For some people, it's the chicken. Some people, it's the egg. Some people believe the virus is living. Some people believe the virus is dead. Nobody knows. It's a song. So for every student, there's a final answer. It's a song, a prayer, a promise, like a wedding ring, and later a baby. Or was that person who delivers babies? So now one other student comes out and says, maybe it's a song or a prayer as in a promise. Okay, like when you get wedded, you have a wedding ring, so it binds a promise. And later, when you have a baby, you promise to keep the baby, uh, give the baby the best you can give him, the best that is possible. Or was that person that delivers babies a midwife? Yes, a midwife. No, that's wrong. You're so wrong, you'll never be right again. A midwife? The person who delivers babies is called a midwife. And, but how can, firstly, because a baby, a baby is someone who is the most, a baby is one who's loved the most. If so, and they are the most innocent. So, innocence, that's the element there. A gun, one who shoots is not innocent at all, right? One who shoots and kills a person, they are not innocent. While the baby, it can't even do anything. It's completely innocent. So, And the person who delivers babies, they are even more innocent because they will just help the mother give birth to the baby and then deliver the baby safely. They'll make sure everything is good with the baby so that the baby is completely innocent, and then they're more innocent. What's more innocent than a person who delivers babies, right? No, that's wrong. You're so wrong, you'll never be right again. Why? Because how can a person who delivers babies the person who said this, the student who said this, thinks how can this line, the one who's contradicting the one saying it about song, baby, midwife, and all, this student who is contradicting him, they're saying you're wrong. Why? Because you cannot have someone who is, every person will make the mistake, so no one is innocent. Only maybe when you're a baby you are innocent, but even after one point even you become non-innocent. So how much ever, even if you're a midwife, you're not very innocent, you're a human, so you will make mistakes, and then again, that's why you're wrong. Nobody can be, there's no way a midwife can be the opposite of gun, right? Then they say it's a whisper, a star. It's saying I love you into your hand and then touching someone's ear. It's like they imagine that maybe it's none of these. They say it's a whisper. It may be whispering. It's a whisper because whisper is quiet, right? The quietest, but it gives a message, a good message mostly. But yeah, a good message. You're whispering some thing which is very good, which is very happy. So it's a whisper. It's a star. Why a star? Because the stars are so high, so far away, so perfect that it is so wonderful. It's saying I love you into your hand and then touching someone's ear. It's like indirectly saying I love you to someone, right? You don't have the courage to say it to them directly, so indirectly, quietly, stealthily telling them I love you, right? But then another student comes out and contradicts this student. Are you crazy? I'm the president of stupid land. You should be. When's the election? She ridicules this guy. She says, are you crazy? I mean, how can this be the opposite of gun? You've got to be president of stupid land. So, you, when's the next election for the presidentship? It's a teddy bear, a sword, a perfect peach. Another student comes out and says, it's a teddy bear for comfort, for when you are feeling alone, when you are, or a sword to protect yourself from the gun, to break it. A perfect peach. Why peach? Because the gun is something which will harm you. Well, a peach will be something that gives you strength, right? Peach is a fruit, so it will, in some or the other form, help you, while gun will only harm you. Go back to the first one. It's a flower, a white rose. Now another student comes out and says, go back. It's none of these which you said is the first one. And particularly, it's a white rose. White rose, why? Because it's the symbol of peace. Gun is the symbol of war. The, the, the flower, the white rose, is a symbol of peace. When the bell rings, I reach for an eraser, but a girl snatches it from my hand. The bell rings. It's a regular class of Rendon's. So, like in every school, when the bell rings, he has to clean the board for the next teacher. But then a girl comes and snatches the eraser from his hand. Nothing's decided, she says. We are not done here. As in, she says no one's agreeing upon the final answer. No one knows what the final answer is. And until we come up with the final answer, you're not allowed to erase it off the board. So, and then he says, I leave all the answers on the board. So it goes to show that the teacher is forced to leave the answers on the board because no one is done with giving their answers. The next day, some of them have stopped talking to each other. They've taken sides. The next day comes his Brendan's regular class in this particular classroom, and he asks. I mean, by the time he's there, these the students have some of the students have divided themselves into groups, as in there's a flower club and a kitten club and two balls calling themselves the snowballs. So there's one who says flower. The flower, I said white rose. I mean, I described the white rose. The flower is something which many people use. The red rose is supposed to depict love. The Everyone loves flowers. There's got to be very few people in this world who don't like flowers. So everyone likes flowers. We come from nature, so at one point or the other, we will like flowers. Most of us. Then there's kitten club. So what's more soft than a kitten, right? What's more adorable than a kitten? And two boys calling themselves the snowballs. So there's two boys who support snowballs. They say snowballs are the best because snowballs, even though they can be destroyed, they can be remade, right? They're made of snow after all. So even if they get destroyed, you can just clump them up and make them again. So you have the snowballs, and the rest, those who have not grouped up, they have stuck to the original game. The rest have stuck to the original game, which was to write something like poetry. And they've stuck with the original game, and then they have tried to produce poetry, their own ideas, in a poem. It's a time. It's a dance. The opposite of a gun is a museum in France. It's the moon. It's a mirror. The opposite, it's the sound of a bell and the hero. So one of the examples Brendan gives, supposed examples, it's a diamond. What's more harder than a diamond, right? The only thing that can cut a diamond is a diamond, right? It's said to be the hardest substance on this planet. It's a dance. Dances are graceful, while the gun shooting is the exact opposite of graceful. The dances are elegant, while death is the exact opposite of elegant. As in, it's so sorrowful, while dance is supposed to bring happiness. It's a form of enjoyment, primarily at least. But death is a form of sorrow, is the reason for sorrow most of the time. Dances are the source of enjoyment in many cases. So, the opposite of a gun is a museum in France. Museum in France? France is just for rhyme scheme, but of this supposed poem. But why a museum? The museum is where they collect a lot of old stuff. You have, they explain, I mean, they collect and they preserve all these old things. You have a, a typical, at least when I imagine a museum, I imagine a typical museum where you have at least one section full of dinosaurs, one section full of that culture, one section for science. So it shows progress, it shows all forms of life, right? So and whenever they portray these um, museums, even in anywhere else, they portray them like there's a section full of, especially in America and such places, they portray them like there's a section full of Egypt and Egyptian things. There's a section full of, you know, dinosaur period from that bones. That's how they are portrayed, at least. But the key idea is when you di- when you go through the museum, what does it show? It is preserving. It is meant to preserve. A museum in France, a museum in France is also just like any other museum. It is also preserving. The France is only used for the rhyme scheme of this supposed poem, but the point is, museum is the center for preservation, while a gun is the center of destruction. Guns, not just guns, bombs, anything, any explosive, be it firecrackers or be it a bomb, any explosive is a, a form of destruction. Um, if it's firecrackers bombs, then they won't do any harm. But if it's something like a atomic bomb or a missile, right, they do huge harm. Even the firecracker bombs, they also harm themselves. They don't harm the environment, but they destroy themselves with the bomb. While for while the missiles destroy not just themselves, but the region where they targeted. So the whole point is the gun and all explosives are the centers of destruction, while a museum is a center for preservation. It's the moon, it's the mirror, it's the sound of a bell and the hearer. It's the moon. Why? Why is the moon the opposite of a gun? Because the moon is so pleasant to the eye at the night. If you've seen a moonlit sky, then you'll find it so pleasant rather than the moon in which, rather than Even though it's dark, it's so beautiful. It's a beautiful dark lit by the moon, right? While the gun, once you're shot, you enter into eternal darkness, never to wake up again. The moon is where you sleep. The moon appears when you sleep, and when you wake up, but then in the morning, next day, you wake up, right? It's there. The moon is there when you sleep, and the moon is there when you wake up. It may be in facing another part of the planet, but it's still there when you wake up. But if it's a gun, firstly, it will not be there when you wake up, but you won't even wake up, right? The whole point is when you get killed, you don't wake up again, right? And then it's eternal sleep because of gun. It's a mirror. You look at yourself. It's self-contemplation. A mirror shows you how good you are and how bad you are. The gun sees neither. The one who shoots sees only specific things, but the one who, but you, but the mirror is indifferent. It just shows you your true self. While the gun, once you are hit by the gun, you enter into eternal sleep. The arguing starts again, more shouting, and finally a new club. For the first time, I dare to push them. So now, once all this, once, so is the next day of the class, and he's in class. He is the second day of the class, which is going through this predicament. The during class, some students, now these students who form clubs, they start fighting. They fight. I'm correct. I'm correct. The flower is correct. The kitten is correct. The snowballs are correct. And finally, a new club forms from one of the guys, presumably from group a group forming a club from the people who didn't form group before. For the first time during these 2 days of predicament, I, as in Brendan, dares to push them. As in, he dares to try to end the conflict. Maybe all of you are right, I say. Well, nobody knows. Is the chicken and egg question? The chicken is the chicken came first or the egg came first? Nobody knows. Maybe the chicken came first. In that case, people will be right. The people who say it's chicken will be right. Maybe the egg came first. In that case, but maybe both of them came together. Nobody knows. I mean, you can keep cycling and you'll end up to a point where no one knows, right? So it's an eternal. It's like saying neither are you wrong, nor is she wrong. Both of you are right. It's like saying one person is walking. There are two people walking at different speeds. One person says, I'm at rest. The first person says, I'm at rest. The ground is moving. The second person is moving faster. The second person says, I'm at rest. The ground is moving. The first person is going away. The first person says, you're going farther away from me ahead. You're going farther ahead. The second person says, you're going further behind. Who's right? Both of them are right. So the whole, maybe all of you are right, I say. Well, maybe. Nobody knows, so it's maybe. Maybe it's everything we said. Maybe it's everything we didn't say. There's trillions of things which could be the opposite of gun, right? You could have a table. A mirror can also, as in the case of the mirror, it can also be used as a shield. Many uses of a mirror. You can have a table. A table can be used as a shield, or a table, and then you can have a house, a building, right? Anything can be, and anything is an opposite of a gun. It's words and the spaces for words. They are looking at each other now. It's words. How many words have they said? So many. But how much space is there for more words? Eternally so many. Right? Infinite. There's infinite amount of space for more words. The dictionary keeps growing every day. Nobody knows why, and nobody will ask why. You just keep coming up with newer and newer words. Right? So, just like in science, there are more and more definitions coming into play, more and more theories coming into play. But just like how there are more and more animals we find every day, how there are more and more people who are born every day. So there's infinite number spaces for words. Even now, even in the next few seconds, there's so many words I can say, right? So during this, there's it's words and the spaces for words. They are looking at each other now. Now there's this suspicion, right? They are looking. Are they really correct, or am I correct? Are we all really correct? Right? So this confusion of mind, this is what they are going through now. It's everything on in this room and outside this room and down the street and in the sky. They are sitting in a classroom. So in a classroom there's desks, there's walls, whatnot, right? Some person will have brought a fancy pencil, a fancy pen, God knows what. Maybe it's someone's birthday. They would have brought chocolates, for example, for celebrations. Nobody knows, right? So it's words, and this spaces for words. Now, it's everything in this room, and outside this room, and down the street, and in the sky. Outside this room, there's a whole world, right? Outside the classroom, there's a whole world. Inside the classroom, there's a whole world. Everywhere, there's a whole world full of possibilities, which can be the opposite of gun. Down the street, just outside this room, is not enough. There's a street nearby, so down the street and in the sky, there's a birds. It's everyone on campus and at the mall and all the people right waiting at the hospital. On campus, school campus. At the mall, there's a mall in every city. So at the mall, it's everyone on campus, everyone and everything. It's everyone and everything on campus, on the school campus, at the mall, at all the people and waiting with their things at the hospital, at the post office, and at the post office. And yeah, it's the flowers too, all the flowers. At the post office, you have many people with their things. They want to post something. There are vehicles, everything, everyone and everything, which is there. Not just people, birds. They have people have pets. They have there's free birds which are unhealthy at times. NGOs come and take them and so on. So there's everything. These everything and everyone, not just nearby, not just in the nearby surrounding. Yeah, he's describing a small area, but he means to say everyone in this world, right? Everyone, everything, every animal, every bird, every plant. Yeah, and yeah, it's a flower too. All the flowers, the whole garden. The whole garden, as in what? Every flower, every plant, every single grass, every single blade of grass. The opposite of a gun is wherever you point it. Naturally. You point it at a you point it at a phone, it's a phone. If you point it at a house, it's a house. I know no one will point it at a house, but yeah, you point it at you point it at a flower, it's a flower. You point it at someone, you it's a that someone. So then they realize, oh, everything we said was correct. Don't write that on the board, they say. Don't write it on the board. Neither can you write it because it's too much to comprehend as a single, and it's too sad and too negative. The opposite of gun is wherever you point it, right? This realization, it's better not put in words. It's rather incapable of being put in words. Don't write that on the board, they say. Just say a poem. Just say a poem you can think of. For your death will sit through many empty poems. The first human being was born long, long ago. After his death, many civilizations came and went. During those civilizations, many poems were written. There's still many poems which are written. There's still many poems which will be written. That first human's death has sat through each and every one of these poems. Some of them shallow, some of them deep. That's why, and some of them empty. Your death will sit through many empty poems. You yourself are nature's poem. And after death, it will be an empty poem. Many empty poems. After your death, you will become an empty poem. People who died beside you and before you, their deaths will sit through not just your empty poem, but many empty poems. Your death will also sit through many more empty poems. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. If you have any suggestions, use the links the hashtags I'm providing, and Thanks again for watching. Stay safe, stay positive, stay peaceful. I am Ashutosh Akkalakote here at Guru KBS. Bye everyone.